What's going on, everybody? Thank you for coming to another video. Today, we are going to be talking about the Sword of Kaigen. Oh my God. This book, I was not expecting this book to be what it was. But before we get into everything about the Sword of Kaigen, let me give you a little brief on what the story of the book is about. So the Sword of Kaigen is about Misaki, who is one of our main POV characters, and her son, Mamoru. And they live in this village in the country of the land of Kaigen. And their village is known as the Sword of Kaigen because it is, it's kind of an entry point for anybody who tries to attack the country. They have to come in through their village to, enter the land of Kaigen. And so the villagers that live in this village are known as great defenders. They're warriors, literally the Sword of Kaigen, as they're the first line of defense, basically, for the land of Kaigen. So the story revolves around Misaki, the mother of Mamoru, and his siblings, and just her journey as a mother, basically. And then we also get another story from Mamoru's perspective. He is, around a teenager. He's coming of age. And he's coming to realize, the country that he actually lives in, and he needs to come to a decision if he wants to continue on believing the things that the nation is telling them, the nation is telling his villagers and neighbors, or if he decides to, take matters into his own hands and go his own way. So my overall thoughts on this book. Amazing book. This book is amazing. And sometimes you think because a book is indie published, this book is an indie published book. Also, I didn't mention the author. The author is M.L. Wang, who also wrote Blood Over Brighthaven, which is a really popular book that I will get to eventually. This was a story. This was a book that I couldn't tell where it was going to go. I thought it was going to go in one direction, but it honestly, each page as I kept on reading kept me surprised. I wasn't expecting it to go in the direction that it went in. And honestly, I think that the direction that it went in made for such a better story than what I was expecting it to do. This book is mainly characters. You can sort of tell there is a plot, but the things that are driving the plot are the characters. Mamoru, Misaki, Takaru, husband of Misaki and father of Mamoru. All these characters were just amazing in the way that their arcs grew and progressed, the way that their arcs progressed throughout the story, and just the way that they interacted with each other. I thought was really interesting. Some of my favorite things from this book were the moments with Misaki and her son. What else can I tell you without giving this book away? I didn't even get into the best part. So this book is something about this book that you all should know. While the Islanders are the defenders of, the first line defenders, while the villagers of where Mamoru and Misaki are the first line defense into the land of Kaigen. The reason that they are is because not everybody, but most people in this world have the ability to bend the same way that people are able to bend in Avatar the Last Airbender. You have three main elements. I believe it was fire, water, air, and then some people can use other sub type of bendings. And the way that the way that bending was done in this book was, I think, so innovative in the way that most people would see it when watching something like Avatar the Last Airbender. I think they really set themselves apart from, being seen as a copycat of the bending style from Avatar the Last Airbender. This was more so focused on the different ways people can use bending elements, and I think it was very distinctive from how bending is seen as Avatar the Last Airbender. And even though I'm calling it bending just because the lexicon, the word choices they use didn't really stick with me if I had anything to gripe on this book. I think this book is an amazing book. The two things that I think that threw me off from this book were some of the word choices that were made in this book to kind of meant to integrate the reader more into the story. To me, I felt like I was kicked out more. An easy way for me to just give you an example without like really spoiling anything for you would be minute. So the word minutes, seconds, hours, all these had their own translation in the book. If I look real quick, and I only realized that there was a glossary after I finished the book, and that would have been pretty helpful. Not really on the author. That's just more so I don't check the back of books for glossary. I've read so many books where I've only realized there's an index or glossary in the back after finishing, 1,000 pages of the book. And I'm like, well, I'm here now, I guess. I'm just going to keep on going as I've been going. But I only noticed this glossary and index after I had finished the story. So if I go to... Okay. So Dinma. Okay. So Dinma is their phrase or their word for a couple of seconds, I guess. Not even a couple of seconds. It is like half a second. It translates to roughly equivalent to 0.43 seconds. And so a sentence would be structured in this book. This is still spoiler free. So a sentence would be structured in this book like in a Dinma, she turned around, So it's like in a second or in a split second, she this or that. And you think I would have caught on to the different phrases or words they had for measures of time in the story, but I didn't. And honestly, I kept on trying. Every time it came up, I kept on trying to figure out what it was supposed to be translating to. And then I couldn't. Sometimes I couldn't figure it out. Sometimes I could, but I would just translate it back into English. I would read the sentence as in a split second. In a second, she did this or she did that, or in a couple of hours he came over here. And so that kind of threw me out of the book because I kept on trying to equate or translate what the word choice for these measures of times were supposed to be. Now, might be a little nitpicky, but I think that really, didn't destroy my enjoyment. Just kind of made me like realize or like kicked me out of the book, made me realize I was reading a story instead of me being more immersed in the story, which is what I think Emma Wang was trying to go for. So this would be my overall rating for the book. Okay. I give this book 4 stars. This is a really good book. I think it does a lot of things really well. I just think that there were a couple of things that could have been polished up on, or, especially because this book was meant to be a series. There was supposed to be a sequel after this book.
To answer that, I'll need to use ChatGPT.
Bro. I like Siri. Stop. So this book is a 4-star book. I say that because I wasn't head over heels blown away by this story, but I really like this story. Like I said, I think there were some things in the story that really kicked me out, and I'll get deeper into some of those things when I get into spoiler territory. But I think there were some things that kicked me out of the story and made me realize, or made me not as immersed as I could have been. And I'll leave it at that. So how do you know if you'll like this book? Well, you'll like this book if you like the magic system in Avatar the Last Airbending, because while they were while they were using their abilities, their magic in this book, I was, sort of picturing this being done, or like the fights with the magic being done in the same animation style in my head that Avatar the Last Airbender was. And I thought it took the magic system that we see in Avatar the Last Airbender, it took it even a step further. So you'll like this book if you like the magic system in Avatar the Last Airbending. You wanted to read more stories that have this kind of elemental magic in it. You'll like this book if you want to read a book about a book about families, and a book that really tests the bonds of families. Can I say that? I don't think I can say that. What can I say? You'll like this book if you want to read a book about motherhood, and a book about, okay. If you want to read a coming of age story about a boy who, is coming to realize a lot of the errors of his nation, you should read this book. If you want to read a book with a strong female lead character that isn't about her being a badass, but more so about her being a mother, and want to see somebody's take on motherhood done in a different way, you should read this book. And so that is why I think you should read The Sword of Kaigen. So I figured I would start off the spoiler section talking about my favorite aspect of this book, which are the characters. The characters, bar none, are the best thing about this book. And let me start off this section by talking about the character that pissed me off the most throughout the whole book, Takaru. Because what the fuck was going on throughout the whole story, Takaru? What was going on? I was pissed at this guy throughout the whole story, because there would be instances where I'm thinking to myself, oh, Takaru, Misaki seems like she's expecting Takaru to blow up at her, right? And then we weren't getting it. So I was like, okay, Takaru's like, in the beginning, I was like, Takaru isn't like this outwardly abusive husband. But then as the book goes on, and I'm reading some of these things, I'm like, he just doesn't care about anything. I thought throughout the whole book, I was waiting for him to care about something. I was waiting for him to care about, his son, what happens to his son, waiting for him to care about what happens to his village. I was waiting for him to care what happens to Misaki. I was waiting for him to care what happened to his brother, right? I was waiting for when that scene where his brother, I think they were talking about how he wanted Takaru to come back to teaching at the dojo, I believe. And Takaru was like, I don't want to do that. I thought that was a scene where I thought we were gonna get this emotional outburst, or we're gonna get something from Takaru, right? But nothing. And then we get the whole information about how he processes very strong emotions for him. And, it recontextualizes a bunch of his interactions that we had seen throughout the story. But it doesn't, for me, it didn't make me forgive him for everything that he did, especially to, Misaki and Mamoru. It didn't make me forgive him. It didn't make me wipe his slate clean for everything. And I think that this is the same stance Misaki was taking in the duel, because she was saying I could leave you, right? I could leave you and I don't have to stay here anymore. But she chooses, and this is what makes the Sword of Kaigen, I think, a 4-star book for me, is that Misaki chooses to, she chooses the harder decision. Instead of leaving with her kids, which would have been easy, she probably could have went, to stay with her brother, her dad or somebody, her mom and dad. She chooses the harder decision and to partner with Takaru in this marriage, in this family, and take the better step, take the next step into being an actual unit, right? And I don't think she would be wrong for either decision. I think it's just more so she's right to choose either decision, but the fact that she makes the harder decision to stick with Takaru, but challenge him to stand up and do better than, what he was doing before. Hey, yes, Takaru pissed me off, but then I didn't forgive him. I more so understood him and then, gave him his last chance, basically. Now let's move on to my 2 favorite characters, Misaki and Mamoru. So, what can I say about these two? Like, I'm gonna start with Mamoru, and I'm gonna build up to Misaki, because Mamoru was our character that we started with in this book, and I loved his story because it was a story about him trying. It was a coming of age story. It was him trying to decide what should his path be, what decisions should he make, in this, when he gets the knowledge of what is actually going on in his country, and what should he do, basically, what decision should he make. And he decides to, not really do either or, more so stand on what he believes in, which is protecting his village, protecting his country, regardless of what they are telling them and regardless of what he knows. At the end of the day, Mamoru says to himself, like, it's not that it doesn't matter, but he's deciding to choose to be this defender of the people, of the land of Kaigen and his village, because he wants to be there. He wants to be the protector for them. And that's exactly how he ends up finishing out his arc, finishing out his life, being that person who he decided to be, a few chapters ago in the story. And I think this hit me most because I was expecting him and Misaki to get together again. When I was reading this book, some of my favorite scenes from this book are when Mamoru and Misaki were together after they've already, laid everything out on the table and have talked about what's really going on. And then I'm saying to myself, I really like these two together, because Misaki is finally realizing that she doesn't have to be this woman who has to be so detached, this mother that has to be so detached from her kids. She can be, close to them, because they are, like she said, they are a part of her and they are a part of Takaru. And she decides eventually to be that kind of mother for them. And we don't get to see them like that again. And it pissed me off, but it's so sad, because my favorite scene is before the dojo scene. So it's after Mamoru comes back from the whole fiasco with his friend Quang. After he comes back from that and he's talking with Misaki, and she comes to this realization, and they just sit outside and they watch, I believe they watch the sunrise and everything. And she says to him, "Let me just be your mother for a little bit before you become a man." And then every scene after that with them few that it may be, because I think the invasion happens pretty abruptly right up to this section. Every scene with them together, I'm just like, I'm loving what's going, the you know, the bond that they're building, that Masaki's trying to build between the two of them, and that gets taken away from us by his death. So let's get into my favorite character. If you have to ask, then you don't know already. Masaki. From where she started out to where she ended up at the end of the book, I think her arc in this book was amazing. She, went from somebody who not only thought that she wasn't not welcome, but she started out as somebody who thought she had to fit in this role, in this, prestigious family. When honestly, all that it really took was for her to, basically talk with Takaru, honestly. Now, when I first started reading this book, I thought it was going to be a story about Masaki, turning to her old ways as a crime fighter and now having to protect her family. And then Takaru, realizing that, hey, his wife is a badass and everything. And I thought that because of the flashback story that we got from Masaki, right? So I thought that we were just going to, I thought it would let us know, like, hey, this character, she's done some shit in her past. So just you wait. And something about me, I like that trope of the retired badass, retired rogue, retired person who has done some shit in their past. And they're just trying to move on with their life in a different direction. But then something comes up and it forces them to pick up their old ways to protect the ones that they love, or just, stay alive. I love that shit. And we got that here, but that wasn't the point of the story, right? The point of the story was really how to just make their family as a unit better overall for everybody in it. And we can kind of segue into plot here, because if you look at it just like from what's on the page, you would think that the plot is about the raiders, not the raiders, but the invaders coming in to attack the land of Kaigen. So you would think it's like some invasion story that has like a plot of like a subplot of revolutionary with the village where Mamoru and Masaki live. Like the villagers will wisen up to how the nation is actually treating them and is how the nation is lying to them, blah, 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 blah. You would think something along those lines. But in actuality, the book is just a family drama, right? Mainly a family drama about how the mother does not really love her kids, does not love her husband, but she feels as if she has to do these things because of her role as a, wife in this family. As the story progresses and this family is put through the ringer from the invasion and the aftermath of the invasion and how we have to sit with that. And then we see that all the events that have happened have really pushed the family and the tension of the family to the limit, where it ends up with the duel between Masaki and Takaru. Now, I didn't think a family drama would make me like this book, but that's exactly why I love this book, because this family was really put to the test of, what will you guys break from all these events, these traumatic events that you guys are going through, and will you break, or will you come out better from it, right? And they come out better for it. I like the way this book is also structured with all the falling action in this book. I think falling action really gives you a chance to sit with the characters in your story and have the characters really, process what happened to them. And it really gives you a really good moment to have some really insightful character interactions between everybody in the story. So next we have world building. Now the world in this book is really interesting. Their magic is interesting, but I think what's more interesting than that is just the mindset of all the villagers in the village of Mamaru, Takaru, and Masaki, about how they, all are being basically lied to about what the actual state of things are in the world and the state of their country as a whole. But I thought that was just really interesting because the nation, has to have these people in the village to defend them from when the invaders come in, right? So even like in the beginning of the book, when we start the book, we get that info dump about the history of the nations and their, surrounding nations and all their the wars and all that. And even though I did skip it, right, in the beginning because I was like, I'm not reading this. I'm like 1 chapter, 2 chapters into this book, and we have to read about like this war or this history that I don't really care about. I skimmed it and kept it moving. If I really needed it, I went back. And the reason I went back was because after I learned that they, are basically trying to brainwash, not really brainwash, but they are feeding these people incorrect information. They're giving them, it's just propaganda to bolster up their belief in the nation. After we learned that, I thought it was interesting to have that section, the history lesson in the beginning, because then I was like, okay, so what in this is actually true and what is just propaganda that they're trying to pass on to the young minds of their village. So yeah, I think the world building was really good. The thing that I didn't really like, or not didn't like, but kind of made me question about the world building, was that the magic didn't seem integrated into the society. So what I mean by this is the village that Masaki and Mamoru and Takaru, the whole Matsuda family, the village that they live in, they are specifically behind in technology compared to everybody around the world, basically everybody in the land of Kaigen. They're not all as technologically advanced as everybody else. So I thought it was interesting that even though they're not as technologically advanced, there weren't a lot of, not that I remember, if I am misremembering this, please let me know, but there weren't a lot of instances where the magic they're bending is integrated into their lives and their society. To me, is more of like they had their bending because it was supposed to be used, because it's supposed to be honed and trained for to fight if ever needed to come to that. But I think being around for so long, you would start integrating the magic that people can use into everyday, not even everyday life, but just like on a larger scale, like in Avatar the Last Airbender. Because this is probably the perfect example. When they go to the city of Omashu and they have the little trolley system that takes people throughout the city, all of that is controlled by earthbending, right? They didn't even like think to start investing in electricity because the earthbenders could just use their abilities to move things to and fro. And so I think I was expecting something like that, right? But it really wasn't. It was just more of like, we can do this, we can do these really cool stuff, and then we also have, advanced technology in our world. So writing. Okay. Like I said before in the spoiler-free section, the writing in this book is good, right? Emma Wang has some really well written scenes, especially scenes like the duel. Chef's kiss, okay? The duel. Wow. But Maru's death scene hit me like a ton of bricks, okay? And also, I think one of the other scenes that I think is underrated is Masaki's friend, her death scene, or just like the death aftermath, right? I thought that was really just like devastating and sad. I thought it was handled really well. But there are parts of this book, like I was saying before, that just threw me out. Along with what I was talking about before with the word choice for measurements of time in this book, I think something else that really threw me off was how the magic users in this world, they all have different names for their magic, right? Or for what they call themselves. Like if you're a waterbender, I believe you're a jikaku. If you're a fire, you're like a funyaku. Don't quote me on this. And if you're air, you're whatever air is, right? Funnily enough, in Avatar the Last Airbender, air is seen as like the one of the good quote unquote elements. It's seen as very like pure and untethered. And in this book, the air users are just fucking evil, right? So what I'm saying about the pros, about the word choice, I think
Editing the Sword of Kaigen video. Basically what I'm saying is there was a lot of words changed and it overloaded my brain basically. So it was like I felt like I had to keep track of a lot of stuff and it was just too much, and it was like a brain overload on the different terminologies and stuff that Emma Wang was using in the book.
And lastly, the themes. My favorite theme from this book was Emma Wang's take on motherhood, right? Editor me, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think postpartum, women that feel postpartum after giving birth or, having a child, something that they can struggle with is being able to feel a connection with their newborn, right? Being able to feel connected to this person, this thing that they really just brought into this world. And this is where Masaki really starts off with her character arc. And I think Emma Wang's take on motherhood and just like the bond that a mother has with her children is something that I really enjoyed experiencing in this book, and something that, it started off in a really cold and isolated place, but as we explored this theme of what does motherhood mean to Masaki herself, and how does she, tackle motherhood after deciding to strengthen her bond with her children, just something that left me a really warm feeling in my heart. And she starts off in this cold place with all her children in the beginning of the book, where she doesn't really feel any connection with them, and she always comments on how her children literally feel cold to her. They feel like their father, Takaru. And as we get the scenes with Mamaru and her, and we get those really heartwarming scenes with them, and we move to some more scenes with her other son, Hiroshi, I believe. So we move on to, her bond with Hiroshi, and then her youngest son, whose name I'm forgetting. And we start to see how she can see the piece of her that is in her youngest son. I don't know what else I can say about this book to, give it all the praise that it really deserves. You guys, if you are watching this because you don't care about spoilers, I mean, go read this book and come back and tell me if it was some shit. If it was some shit, I'll buy you a coffee somewhere. if you live in the DMV. Otherwise, after you read it, tell me why you loved it. Come back and like this video and leave a comment below. I appreciate every single one of you. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked the video, give me a thumbs up and hit subscribe so you can see when my next review is coming out. Just a little surprise, I got some heat coming out, guys. So don't be scared to hit that subscribe button so you can see some of the book reviews that I'm going to be doing. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.